If you are running CBO campaigns in Facebook, then you've probably encountered one single problem. And that core problem is that your same creatives get all of the spend. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how we are solving this across dozens of ad accounts with a brand new feature that has just been released across Facebook ads. So when you're inside your Facebook account, your account might look bigger and bigger and bigger over time. Now over here at the Moonlighters, what we like to do is run a 4-step modular system with prospecting, scale, retargeting, and retention. Now, whether you're doing that or not, as long as you're running a CBO campaign, this strategy, this tactic is going to make a big difference for you. So for this example, I've narrowed down my prospecting campaigns only. So this is an account with 4 different prospecting campaigns, and there's a lot of reasons why we have 4 different campaigns, but the thing that you need to understand is it's broken down by different cohorts of the brand. So when you're running CBO or campaign budget optimization, you are setting the budget at the campaign level. So in this case right here, I have a $3,000 daily budget. Over the last 30 days, this campaign has spent $89,980 and driven a $40 cost per purchase. Really solid result for this brand. Now, when we click into this campaign, we have dozens and dozens of packs. We call them packs here. Basically, these are ad sets with new rounds of creative. And as you can see here, we're all the way up to pack 53, meaning we've launched so many packs, so many ad sets in this campaign. And whenever we launch new ads, what winds up happening is the new packs do not rise to the top unless they are absolute dominant winners. And what everyone seems to be afraid of, and what I'm also afraid of sometimes, is that the newer ads that we launch are not going to get the proper amount of spend that they deserve. For example, this is the latest pack that we just launched. And despite this budget having a $3,000 per day budget, this ad set has only gotten $39 in total spend. Now there's 2 sides to this coin. The first side is that Facebook's going to determine better than I can whether these ads should get spent, and therefore it is saving me money. And on the flip side, there's an argument that Facebook is actually not spending enough to actually understand if it could achieve the cost per purchase that I require. Great example here would be this is a $39 amount spent, but my average cost per purchase is $40. So at best, this should only have been able to drive 1 purchase. Now, the problem that we have here is that Facebook has so many signals early on, impressions, click-through rates, CPCs, etc., just engagement rates across the board that actually indicate whether a purchase is going to happen or not based on that ad. However, us as marketers, we need some validation. We are spending so much money and time creating creatives that we need to make sure that the right creatives are getting the right amount of spend. I have been on the first side of the coin, the side that Facebook is doing this right. Facebook should not be tweaked with, and it's okay if some packs, if some creative concepts just don't get spend. However, my mind has shifted just a little bit. Because of this new feature, we can now have the best of both worlds. So when you go into a new pack, you've always seen down in your budget and schedule section, ad set spending limits. And most of the time, if I've ever talked about them, I've mentioned putting in minimums. So I've mentioned putting in a dollar amount minimum or a dollar amount maximum. Now, the problem with that is as you scale, these change. For example, if you have a $1,000 per day budget, you might set your maximum to $800, so everything else could play around with $200. That sounds fine at first. However, what happens when you go to $1,000 to $2,000? When you go from $1,000 to $2,000, you then need to change that $800 to a higher amount. And now you actually have to limit test a specific ad set, which means too many variables are tweaking. You might as well just run an ABO or ad set budget optimization. Here's where all of this changes. Just recently, Facebook has launched a new button right here. Instead of use dollar value, you could use percentage value. And when setting percentage value, I do not recommend ever setting a minimum. At least we haven't tested this so far. Setting a minimum for percentage value could get really, really sketchy really quick because you're actually forcing a very small percentage to each individual ad set versus just a dollar amount. The reason that we set a daily minimum as a dollar amount is because that daily minimum could be actually set based on your cost per acquisition target. My recommendation, you set your daily minimum for new ad sets to your dollar amount equal to your target cost per acquisition. If your target cost per acquisition or target CPA is $50, you set your minimum to $50. On the flip side, the new strategy, what we're testing out right now and what is working tremendously well is we're basically creating a CBO within the CBO, right? We're creating 2 different mechanisms in the same campaign. And what we do instead is we use percentage value for daily maximum percentage. So let's say this ad set that I'm at right now is taking up all of the spend in the campaign. Let's say it's taking up 90% of the spend. I'm going to want to maximum percent this at a certain cap. Now, usually that floats around 60%, 70%, even 50%, but we just want to make sure that it's not getting outrageously high so that it's actually doing what it's already doing. So in this case, let's say I set a 60% maximum. What that means is that this budget will spend no more than 60% of the total campaign budget. So whether I set my daily budget to $3,000, which you can see right here, or I set it to $30,000, it's going to spend at most 60%. This is so much more valuable for setting maximums than it is for using dollar amounts to set maximums, because it scales as you scale budget or as you reduce budget as well. Okay, so why does this even work? What makes this special? Think about it like this. I'm going to do this in a spreadsheet so you can see what I'm thinking in real time. So if you have a total budget of $3,000, what happens in a normal CBO environment is the budget will be spread however it wants across ad sets. So let's say we have 10 different ad sets that we've launched over the course of the month. In an ABO environment, Facebook is going to spread that based on whatever budgets you set. For example, it might spend $300 across the board, totaling to the $3,000 budget. In a CBO environment, what might wind up happening is the first ad set gets 300, the next gets 500, the next gets 300, the next gets 200, the next gets 1,000, the next gets 50, 20, 40, 50, and ad set number 10 gets 540 for a total, which we can see down in the right corner, of 3,000. This is great because ad set 5 is probably the strongest. That's why CBO works very well, because it pushes budget to the best performing ads. What happens is you go to launch in ad set 11, right? This is the new ad set that you launched. And when you add ad set 11 in here and you keep your budget at $3,000, then this cash needs to be distributed elsewhere. So you see a shift happen, right? So when we add ad set 11 in here, 300 might go to 280, 500 might go to 480, 300 might go to 200, 200 might go to 100, 1,000 might stay, 50, 20, 40, 50, 540, and then whatever the remaining balance is, which is 240, might go to ad set 11. However, what usually happens is this ad set usually doesn't get immediately 10% of the budget. This is around 8% of the budget. What actually usually happens here is ad set number 11, unless it's an absolute home run, usually gets very little spent. It only gets maybe $20 to spend. And then you say to yourself, is this ever going to pick up? Now, the thing that winds up happening over time with CBO campaigns is your ad set number 5, the ad set that hogs the budget, really starts hogging the budget. And let's say this gets up to $2,000 in ad spend. You're now in a position where everything else is significantly lower. So we'll reduce everything down. And after we reduce everything down, you'll notice, oh my gosh, ad set number 5 is hogging all of my budget. So what we would do instead here, this is taking up 66% of the total budget. So we would say, hey, ad set number 5, you could take no more than 50% of the budget. Now, that's not a perfect science. You have to go off a little bit of feel here. This is early days of testing this. So that means that ad set number 5 could only spend $1,500 a budget, and that everything else could get the additional $1,500 remaining. The $1,500 remaining can now be split across all of these, where they're only spending $1,000. That's $500 more that can go into all of these other ad sets. And when you launch new ad sets, it guarantees that the number one ad set will not hog the budget. This is why this strategy is working well, because we are basically creating two little CBOs. And the cool part about this, you might ask yourself, well, why don't I just isolate this? Why don't I just take ad set that's spending all the budget, which we can see right here, and why don't I just say, let's put that into a new campaign, or let's just give that a maximum dollar amount, or why don't you just set up an ABO? The reason you don't set ABO or ad set budget optimization, and the reason you don't do any of those examples I just gave, is because in this example right here, this 50% is a max. So it is allowed to spend under the 50%. It can go to 30%. It can go to 0. It could spend nothing. It's just saying at absolute most 50% is what we're spending. So look, this is a strategy that we are testing right now. I think it's going to be huge in the fourth quarter. If you get value out of tips, tactics, and little things like this, let me know in the comments below, because I don't always post stuff just along these lines. And by the way, if you want to work with pros, especially as we start 2026, which is right around the corner, go down in the description and click on themoonlighters.com/apply to see if you're fit to work with us.